Here are my recommendations, and these are just my recommendations for immediate reforms to UK police firearms training. And when I say immediate, I mean implemented within 6 to 12 months, not decades of committee meetings. Increase annual training requirements from 120 hours to a minimum of 200 hours, moving back towards the 224-hour standard. It represents an investment in competency that could prevent future Manchester-style tragedies. That would cost approximately 20 to 25 million. Return to regular monthly intensive training programs, not just annual qualifications. Firearms skills degrade rapidly without consistent practice. Monthly 8 to 16-hour sessions maintain muscle memory and decision-making capabilities that annual assessments cannot replicate. Implement a phased increase in accuracy requirements from current 70 to 80% towards historical 90+ levels. Not demand an immediate return, but it would be but phase it in over maybe 3 years. Annual qualification allows skill degradation over 12-month periods, return to quarterly or even, every 4 months. Competency testing to identify and remediate degrading skills before they become operational failures. Develop mandatory training modules specifically addressing the risks for all the weapon systems, particularly stressing the danger of the 5.56. Because that high velocity round is lethal. Even behind a brick wall, it's a lethal round. Officers have got to understand the penetration characteristics of their ammunition through various materials. When to use pistol versus carbine. Because everybody wants to grab the carbine because it looks cool. But sometimes the pistol's a more sensible and safer choice. People have got to be aware tactically. They've got to be able to select proper angles. You cannot have Chinese firing squads. You cannot have civilians put in danger. You have to be able to look past your subject and see what's behind him, especially in complex environments. I think we need to develop specific training scenarios for situations involving armed civilians defending against attackers. A modern threat profile that requires specialised training and friend-foe identification under stress. Backdrop awareness with civilians in immediate proximity. Weapon selection appropriate for tactical environment. Ballistic considerations for various barrier types. Conduct immediate review of the 5.56 carbine deployment protocols for urban counter-terrorism operations. City of London have recognised this issue and initiated replacement of their G36C carbines. So maybe that review should be expanded nationally. Alternative calibers with reduced overpenetration, back to the 9mm. Alternative rifle calibers. Specialised urban ammunition types, lower load, lower speed, tactical protocols for weapon selection based on environment, training requirements specific to high penetration weapon systems. Systemic reforms are needed to address the underlying issue of strategic reforms. We need to improve the deteriorating training facilities. You can't deliver high-end training from deteriorating facilities that are falling apart. This requires capital investment. The professional development pathway is one good step towards improving operational performance experience and giving you a quality service as the ultimate consumer. Conduct comprehensive analysis of successful training models from all eras and see how they apply to modern environments. Not everything's better in the past, but unquestionably some things were. Learn from history instead of discarding it. We need to have true independent oversight of firearms training standards, separate from force level command structures that might prioritise cost savings over competency. College of Policing performs this function to some degree, but it needs enhanced authority and resource. We need to publish detailed firearms discharge reports, including weapons and ammunition used, accuracy data and hit rates, unintended casualties in friendly fire incidents, ballistic analysis of over-penetration occurrences, lessons learned in training modifications. Sunlight is the best disinfectant. If you put something out there and people can review it, then the exposure can help, especially in the public sector. We were talking about inadequately trained senior officers doing tactical evaluations and briefings and things, and we get sent to a call. Guy in a soldier, ex-soldier, I think, he'd brought a AK-47 back from the Gulf, and he had taken a couple of pot shots at vehicles around the flats that he was in, and a couple into the police station. And we get sent to the police station. We were sent to Gorbals police station, where this guy was in the near vicinity. So we goes into the police station, parks the car out the back, goes upstairs to the briefing, walks in the door. I walks in the door, looks to my colleague who's looking at me. We both sidestepped and turned the lights off. And the senior officer's like, "What's going on?" And I'm like, "Well, sir, where is this guy?" And he said, he's in the Elizabeth flats, the Queen Elizabeth flats. I said, "And what floor is he on?" And he said, "I think it's 8. 8 out of 12. And I said, "Can you point to where he is?" And he goes, "Yeah, he's just, oh." So at that point, he realised that he had a well-lit room full of cops getting briefed and a guy with an AK-47 in target range. Does UK policing need a cultural shift in how it views firearms competency? Probably. If you're looking at 70 to 80% as acceptable, it's not even a pass mark in my book. It's just not there. Excellence in marksmanship has to be valued and it has to be rewarded. And officers need to take personal pride in their shooting skills. Viewing firearms training as an annual requirement to maintain certification promotes minimum effort. Reframe it as continuous professional development where officers are constantly improving, not just maintaining baseline competency. Shift from revolvers to high-capacity pistols to 5.56 carbines has prioritised firepower over precision and ballistic appropriateness. Modern training must emphasise weapon selection appropriate in the tactical environment, not just deploying the most powerful weapon available. We need to get away from this Hollywood thing where cops are shooting at people. If you're doing it right, you're shooting a guy once or twice if it's a double tap. Anything over 25 metres, you're shooting them once because you're not double tapping at that range. Some of the training degradation stems from risk-averse management cultures that minimise firearms deployments, but if officers are genuinely confident in their competency, through rigorous training, including understanding their weapons' ballistic characteristics, decision makers can be more confident in authorising deployments when necessary. What won't fix the problem? More PowerPoint training. Additional classroom instruction and tactics and legal frameworks is not a substitute for live fire practical training. You cannot PowerPoint your way to accurate shooting. Better equipment? What do you need? What do you need that's better than a Glock 17? What's better than a G36C? You know? What's better than an MP5? Newer guns or fancier optics won't solve the problem, won't compensate for inadequate training, won't compensate for stupidity. We had a firearms instructor put 2 rounds into a banister because he was using a red dot optical sight in his H&K MP5. And while the optical sight was above the banister, the barrel was against it almost. He put 2 rounds in quick succession into the banister. Henceforth, he was called Roger Bannister. Prosecuting the officers who shot Adrian Dolby might satisfy public anger, but it won't prevent future tragedies. It's a training failure. Inadequate inaccuracy standards. Insufficient hours and apparently inadequate ballistic training regarding over-penetration risks. Fix the system, not just the individuals. On October the 2nd, 2025, Adrian Dolby did everything right. A terrorist attacked his synagogue on the holiest day of his faith. He didn't run, he didn't hide, he stood at the doors with other brave people and physically held them shut. He prevented further carnage, possibly even a massacre. He was a hero in every sense of the word, and he was killed by the people sworn to protect him. Not because those officers were incompetent or malicious, but because the system that trained them had been systematically degraded over decades. Training hours cut, accuracy standards reduced, facilities deteriorating, all to save millions in their training budget. They also apparently had inadequate training on the ballistic characteristics of their weapons. Over-penetration risks of firing 5.56 NATO rounds through even solid wooden doors, with civilians positioned directly behind them. Adrian Dolby paid the price for those savings and that inadequate training with his life. Johnny Finlay paid the price with a gunshot wound and lifelong trauma. Their families paid the price with grief and loss that will never heal. And we, the public, paid the price with a continuation of the shattered faith in the police who are supposed to protect us. It didn't have to happen. The standards had been maintained that it was less likely to have happened. If the correct weapon choices were made and the correct ammunition choices were made, it was less likely to have happened. If those cops had been trained to the same standards, it's more likely they would have hit their target and done their job. The probability is that it would have been substantially lower for this outcome to have come out the way it did. It might not have done it, but I think the evidence is damning and the data is clear. The solution is obvious. Restore training volume, raise accuracy standards, implement continuous skill maintenance, provide comprehensive ballistics training, and review weapon systems for urban appropriateness. Adrian Dolby deserved better. You deserve better the next time. The British public deserve better. Those firearms officers that pull the trigger, they deserve better. Channel your anger, if you have any, into demanding change. Contact your MP, write to the Home Office, demand that police firearms training standards be restored to levels that actually protect public safety. Rest in peace, Adrian Dolby. Rest in peace.